The Great Hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with quiet conversations as representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered for the monthly session. Species of all shapes and sizes filled the massive chamber, their translators humming softly as they discussed trade routes and territorial disputes. At the center of it all sat the Council of 12, the most powerful civilizations in known space. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the speaking platform, her simple blue uniform stark against the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor worn by other delegates. She was human, representing the newest member of the galactic community. Earth had joined just 5 years ago, and many still saw them as children playing among giants. "The motion before us today," announced Speaker Vextai, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence, "concerns the territorial claim submitted by the human delegation. They request exclusive rights to their entire star system, extending beyond the orbit of their outermost planet." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Such large territorial claims were unusual for a single world species. Most civilizations only claimed the space around their inhabited planets, leaving asteroid belts and outer regions open for mining or passage. Chen stepped forward, her voice calm and steady. "Honored delegates, humanity formally requests recognition of our solar system as restricted space. No vessels may enter without explicit permission from Earth authorities." The Zephyrian delegate, Admiral Kethvar, rose from his seat, his reptilian features twisted into what humans had learned to recognize as amusement. "With respect to our new friends from Earth, this request is unreasonable. You claim rights to an area larger than some empires control. What could one world possibly need with so much empty space?" Other delegates nodded in agreement. The Andromedans whispered among themselves, their crystalline forms chiming softly. The hegemony representatives exchanged glances, their mechanical bodies clicking as they processed this information. Chen remained calm. "The restriction exists for the protection of all galactic citizens. We strongly advise that all vessels respect these boundaries." "Protection from what?" asked Chancellor Morathek of the Centauri Alliance. Her gaseous form shimmered with curiosity. "Your world has no significant military presence. Your technology, while impressive for such a young species, poses no threat to established powers. What danger could you possibly represent?" The human admiral paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "The danger is not what we represent, but what we might become if provoked. Humanity has learned from our history. We prefer peace, but we prepare for war." Laughter echoed through the chamber. The Zephyrians were particularly amused, their translator making hissing sounds that indicated mockery. "Humans," Kethavar said, his voice dripping with condescension. "You have one world, a few orbital stations, and some mining operations in your asteroid belt. The Zephyrian Empire spans 17 star systems. Our fleets number in the thousands. Your entire species could fit in one of our smaller cities. What possible threat could you pose?" Chen's expression never changed. "We have given you fair warning. The choice of whether to heed it remains yours." The vote was swift and predictable. The Council rejected humanity's territorial claim by an overwhelming margin. Only a few smaller worlds abstained and none voted in support. The restriction would not be officially recognized by galactic law. As the session ended, delegates filed out discussing the amusing audacity of the humans. Many made jokes about the tiny world that thought it could claim space like a galactic superpower. Chen gathered her materials in silence, ignoring the comments and laughter around her. "Admiral Chen," called a familiar voice. She turned to see Ambassador Tillich of the Rigel Commonwealth approaching. His species was among the oldest in the galaxy, their slug-like forms known for their wisdom and caution. "Ambassador," Chen replied with a respectful nod. "Your request today was unusual," Tillich said quietly. "My people have observed many species rise and fall over the millennia. We have learned to recognize certain patterns. Your words carried weight that others did not hear." Chen studied the ancient being. "And what did you hear, Ambassador?" "A warning that was not a threat but a promise." "Tell me, Admiral, should my people avoid human space?" "That would be wise," Chen replied simply. Tilech's eye stalks swiveled thoughtfully. "We will update our navigation charts accordingly. I hope others prove equally wise." Over the following months, the restriction became a joke throughout civilized space. Cargo ships routinely crossed through the outer edges of the human system, cutting days off their journey times. Explorer vessels ignored human protests as they surveyed the gas giants for resources. Pirates used the outer planets as hiding spots. knowing that human patrol ships rarely ventured far from Earth. Each violation was met with the same response: a formal diplomatic protest and a renewed warning about the consequences of entering restricted space. The humans never fired a shot or made any aggressive moves. They simply repeated their warnings with mechanical persistence. The Zephyrian Empire took particular pleasure in flaunting human authority. Their merchant fleets began using Sol system as a regular waypoint, broadcasting entertainment programs as they passed through. Kethavar himself led several ceremonial flights through human space, each one accompanied by recordings of the council session where humanity's claims were rejected. "Let the humans protest," Kethavar declared during one such flight. What will they do? Send angry messages? File complaints with the council? Their military consists of system patrol boats and orbital defense platforms. "We have conquered civilizations 1,000 times more powerful." His crew laughed at the jest, their ships broadcasting taunting messages toward Earth as they passed. The human response was always the same: a calm, professional warning about the dangers of remaining in restricted space. But not everyone found the situation amusing. Several of the older, more cautious species quietly updated their star charts to avoid human space entirely. The Rigel Commonwealth issued internal advisories to their trading fleets. The Antarian Collective, despite their official positions supporting the Council's decision, began routing their ships around Sol system. When asked about these precautions, their representatives gave vague answers about respecting territorial sovereignty and maintaining peaceful relations. Privately, their leaders spoke of things they had observed during humanity's brief membership in the galactic community. Humans learned languages too quickly. They asked too many technical questions during trade negotiations. Their embassy staff showed unusual interest in military specifications and defensive capabilities. Most disturbing of all, human merchants and diplomats had spread throughout the galaxy with surprising speed, establishing trade relationships and cultural exchanges with remarkable efficiency. "It's probably nothing," admitted Chancellor Vexai of the Antarian Collective during a private meeting with his advisors. "But humans have been studying us far more thoroughly than we have been studying them. Their questions are too specific, their knowledge too detailed. Either they are remarkably quick learners, or they have been preparing for something." These concerns were dismissed by the major powers. The Zephyrians in particular saw any caution regarding humans as cowardice. Their empire had expanded through strength and conquest, and they viewed diplomatic courtesy as weakness. The situation continued for over a year. Human warnings grew more frequent and more urgent as violations increased. Earth's representatives began appearing at council sessions with detailed logs of boundary crossings, requesting immediate action to enforce their territorial sovereignty. Each request was denied or delayed. The council saw no reason to accommodate what they viewed as unreasonable demands from an insignificant world. The humans had no power to enforce their will, and everyone knew it. Admiral Chen's final appearance before the council was different from her previous presentations. She stood at the speaking platform with the same calm demeanor, but her words carried a new finality. "Honored delegates, this will be humanity's last formal warning regarding violations of our territorial sovereignty. We have attempted to resolve this matter through diplomatic channels, but our concerns have been consistently ignored. Please understand that any vessel entering Sol system without authorization from this point forward will be considered a hostile act." The chamber erupted in laughter. Even some of the more cautious species found the threat absurd. Kethavar stood to respond, his voice full of mockery. "And what will the mighty human fleet do to enforce this ultimatum? Will you file another complaint? Send another strongly worded letter?" Chen looked directly at the Zephyrian admiral. "We will do what is necessary to protect our space and our people. This is your final warning." The vote to dismiss humanity's ultimatum was even more one-sided than before. As Chen left the chamber, she activated her personal communicator and spoke a single word: "Commence." Across the galaxy, human ambassadors, traders, and cultural attachés quietly began withdrawing from their posts. Within weeks, every human diplomatic mission had closed. Every trade agreement had been suspended, and every cultural exchange program had been terminated. When asked about this sudden withdrawal, Earth's response was simple: humanity requires time to focus on internal affairs. The galaxy watched with amusement as the insignificant human civili. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Talon watching the stars shift past the viewport as his fleet approached the outer edge of human space. Behind him stretched a formation of 50 warships, the pride of the Zephyrian Third Fleet. Each vessel bristled with weapons capable of cracking planets, their hulls reinforced with armor that had turned aside the attacks of a dozen conquered civilizations. "Sir, we are approaching the boundary of human-claimed territory," reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Sarthek. "Shall we proceed?" Kethavar's reptilian features twisted into a grin that showed rows of sharp teeth. "Of course we proceed. I want to see what these upstart mammals think they can do to stop us." The fleet had been planning this demonstration for months. Ever since the humans had withdrawn from galactic society, there had been wild speculation about their reasons. Some suggested they were developing new technologies in secret. Others believed they were planning some kind of terrorist attack. The Zephyrian High Command had decided to investigate personally. "This will show the galaxy that Zephyrian strength cannot be threatened by empty words," Kethavar declared to his bridge crew. "When we return with detailed scans of their pathetic defenses, every species will know that the Empire fears nothing." As they crossed the invisible line marking the beginning of Sol System, long-range sensors began their sweep. The initial readings matched intelligence reports perfectly. One inhabited world orbiting a yellow star, with small orbital stations and mining operations scattered throughout the inner system. A few patrol boats moved slowly between Earth and Mars, their energy signatures barely registering on Zephyrian instruments. "Laughable," muttered the fleet's intelligence officer, Commander Vextar, as he reviewed the data. "Their entire military could not defeat a single one of our corvettes. How did such a weak species survive long enough to develop space travel?" The answer came sooner than expected. As the fleet passed the orbit of the outermost planet, every console on every ship began screaming warnings simultaneously. Energy signatures were appearing throughout the system, massive ones that had not been there moments before. "Report," Kethavar shouted over the chaos of alarms. "Sir, massive contacts appearing on all vectors," Sarthek replied, his voice tight with confusion. "They appear to be decloaking." The main display changed to show a tactical overview of the entire system. What they saw defied belief. Hundreds of structures were materializing throughout Sol System, each one larger than a Zephyrian battleship. They appeared to be built into asteroids, their surfaces bristling with weapon emplacements and sensor arrays. "Impossible," whispered Vextar. "Our intelligence showed only minor mining operations in the asteroid belt. These installations would have taken decades to construct." More contacts appeared around the gas giants. What had seemed like natural planetary rings resolved into countless smaller structures, each one clearly artificial. Jupiter alone was surrounded by what looked like a complete battle fleet, but one built from the planet's own moons and orbital debris. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the third planet." "Put it through," Kethavar ordered, his voice steady despite the growing alarm spreading through his crew. The familiar face of Admiral Chen appeared on the main screen. She sat in what appeared to be a command center, with dozens of displays showing tactical information behind her. Her expression was calm, almost sad. "Admiral Kethavar," she said, addressing him directly, "you have entered restricted space despite repeated warnings. This is your final opportunity to withdraw. Leave now and no harm will come to your fleet." Kethavar found his voice, though it took effort. "What is this? Where did these installations come from? Our intelligence showed nothing like this." Chen's expression did not change. "Your intelligence showed what we wanted it to show. Humanity has been preparing for this day since we first learned we were not alone in the universe. We hoped it would never come, but we planned for it nonetheless." The tactical display updated again, showing new contacts appearing near Saturn. The planet's rings were not rings at all, but a massive construction project. Thousands of platforms orbited the gas giant, their purpose becoming clear as weapon systems began powering up across the system. "This is impossible," Kethavar repeated. "You have been members of Galactic Society for only 5 years. How could you have built all this without anyone knowing?" "We have been watching the galaxy for much longer than 5 years, Chen replied. "We studied your civilizations, your technologies, your methods of warfare. We learned from your strengths and weaknesses. When we finally revealed ourselves to the Council, we had already been preparing for potential conflict for decades." Lieutenant Sarthek's voice cut through the conversation. "Sir, energy readings are off the scale. These installations are drawing power from sources I cannot identify. Some appear to be tapping directly into the local star. The viewport dimmed automatically as brilliant light flared across the system. Around the sun itself, a network of structures became visible, each one larger than anything the Zephyrians had ever built. They formed an incomplete shell around the star, clearly designed to harvest its energy on an unimaginable scale. A Dyson swarm, breathed the science officer. They are building a Dyson swarm around their star. The energy output would be sufficient to power weapons capable of destroying entire fleets. Kethavar tried to process what he was seeing. Every piece of space debris, every asteroid, every moon in the system had been converted into part of a massive defensive network. Humanity had not just colonized their solar system. They had weaponized it. How many ships do you have hidden here? He demanded. Chen shook her head.
Ships are inefficient.
They require crews, life support, complex coordination. We built something better. Every installation you see is autonomous, connected to a central intelligence network. They do not need rest, food, or sleep. They do not feel fear or hesitation. They exist for one purpose: to defend human space. New contacts appeared on the tactical display, moving rapidly between the larger installations. These were smaller, more numerous, and clearly built for combat. They emerged from hidden bays in asteroids and gas giant moons, their formation patterns suggesting coordination that no biological crew could achieve. Drone fighters, whispered Vextar. Thousands of them. Oh, tens of thousands. The communication channel crackled as Chen continued. We tried to warn you, Admiral. We told the Council that our territory existed for everyone's protection. We never wanted this confrontation, but you forced our hand. Kethavar's training finally reasserted itself. Whatever humanity had built, it was still only one system against the might of the Zephyrian Empire. You may have surprised us with your preparations, but you are still vastly outnumbered. The Empire has thousands of ships, millions of soldiers. You cannot threaten our entire civilization. For the first time, Chen's expression changed. A small, sad smile crossed her face. Admiral, you still do not understand. You think this is about numbers, about ships and soldiers. But warfare is not about who has the most pieces on the board. It is about who understands the game being played. The tactical display updated one final time, showing energy signatures throughout the galaxy. Points of light appeared near every major Zephyrian world, each one representing something that had been hidden until this moment. While you were laughing at our warnings, Chen continued, our merchants were studying your defenses. Our diplomats were mapping your command structures. Our cultural attachés were identifying critical infrastructure. Every trade agreement, every cultural exchange, every diplomatic mission was an intelligence-gathering operation. Kethavar felt cold understanding wash over him. You have been planning this from the beginning. We have been planning for every possibility from the beginning, Chen corrected. We hoped for peace, but we prepared for war. Not just any war, but total war. The kind of war that ends civilizations. The implications hit the Zephyrian admiral like a physical blow. If humanity had been gathering intelligence for years, if they had been placing assets throughout the galaxy, while everyone dismissed them as harmless newcomers, then the Empire was not facing an invasion of their territory. They were facing the activation of a trap that had been years in the making. You are 50 ships in one system, Chen continued, her voice growing harder. But you are not just 50 ships. You are representatives of a civilization that chose conquest over cooperation, that ignored diplomatic warnings in favor of military intimidation. Your empire will learn the cost of that choice. Alarms began sounding throughout the Zephyrian fleet as targeting systems locked onto their ships. The defensive network that had revealed itself was not just defensive. It was the most concentrated firepower any of them had ever seen. Last chance, Admiral, Chen said quietly. Withdraw your forces, and this ends here. Continue your advance, and you will discover what happens when humans stop being polite. Kethavar looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were experienced warriors who had fought in a dozen campaigns, but he saw fear in their eyes for the first time. The tactical situation was unlike anything in Zephyrian military doctrine. They were not facing an enemy fleet. They were inside an enemy weapon system that spanned an entire star system, but retreat was not an option. So the first shots fired by the Zephyrian fleet were impressive by any standard. Plasma beams capable of melting through starship armor lanced across space, while torpedo volleys that could crack moon surfaces streaked toward the nearest human installations. The weapons that had conquered 17 star systems unleashed their fury against humanity's defensive network. The human response was immediate and devastating. Every shot was intercepted before reaching its target. Point defense systems materialized from seemingly empty space, their targeting so precise that incoming projectiles were destroyed at the molecular level. Energy weapons were absorbed by barrier fields that redirected the power into the very installations they were meant to destroy. "Impossible," breathed Lieutenant Sarthek as he watched his tactical display. "Our weapons are not even scratching their defenses." Admiral Kethavar stared in disbelief as the human installations began their counterattack. What emerged from their weapon ports was unlike anything in Zephyrian experience. Instead of traditional energy beams or kinetic projectiles, streams of what looked like metallic liquid shot across space toward his ships. "Evasive maneuvers," he ordered. But the strange weapons moved too fast and adapted too quickly. The liquid metal struck the hull of the destroyer sector and began spreading across its surface like a living thing. "Sir, the sector is reporting system failures," the communications officer announced. "Their hull is being dissolved from the outside in." On the main display, they watched in horror as the proud destroyer simply came apart. Its armor plating fell away in sheets, revealing the internal structure beneath. But even that did not last long. The strange weapon consumed everything it touched, leaving nothing behind but expanding clouds of component atoms. "What kind of weapon is that?" demanded Commander Vextar. His answer came from an unexpected source. The main communication channel activated, and Admiral Chen's voice filled the bridge. She was not calling to negotiate. She was explaining what they were witnessing. "Nanoscale disassembler swarms," she said calmly. "They break down matter at the molecular level and use the raw materials to replicate themselves. Your ship is not being destroyed. It is being recycled." The clinical precision with which she described the weapon was somehow more terrifying than watching it work. This was not the heat of battle or the rage of war. This was the methodical application of scientific principles to the complete destruction of enemy forces. "But that is only the beginning," Chen continued. "You wanted to test human military capabilities. Very well. Let us show you what we have learned." More weapon systems activated across the defensive network. Energy beams that seemed to ignore traditional shielding passed through Zephyrian barriers like they were not there, striking hulls directly. Gravitational manipulators created miniature black holes that pulled ships apart from the inside. Temporal displacement weapons caused sections of vessels to age millennia in seconds, their hulls crumbling to dust. Kethavar realized with growing horror that each weapon was specifically designed to counter Zephyrian defensive technology. The barriers that had protected their ships against every other enemy were useless. The armor that had withstood planetary bombardments was being circumvented entirely. "They have studied us," he whispered. "Every engagement, every battle report, every technical specification. They know exactly how our defenses work." "Sir," Sarthek reported, his voice tight with fear, "long-range sensors are detecting movement near our homeworld. Multiple contacts appearing throughout Zephyrian space." The tactical display shifted to show a galaxy-wide view. Points of light were appearing near every major Zephyrian installation, each one representing the activation of something that had been hidden for years. Military bases, industrial centers, population centers, all were suddenly surrounded by contacts that had not been there moments before. "How is this possible?" Vextar demanded. "Our security is absolute. No foreign vessels could approach our worlds undetected." Chen's voice answered him. "You are correct. No foreign vessels approached your worlds, but our vessels are not foreign anymore. We have been part of galactic society for 5 years. Our merchants trade in your markets. Our diplomats walk in your halls of power. Our students attend your universities." The horrifying implications became clear. While everyone had been laughing at humanity's territorial claims, human agents had been positioning assets throughout the galaxy. Every trade mission, every cultural exchange, every diplomatic contact had been a cover for the largest intelligence operation in galactic history. "Every human outside our system is an agent," Chen continued. "Every cargo ship that docked at your stations carried more than trade goods. Every embassy building contained more than diplomats. We told you that our territorial restrictions existed for everyone's protection. We meant it." On the tactical display, Kethavar watched the systematic activation of what could only be weapons platforms disguised as civilian installations. Orbital stations that had served as trading posts for years suddenly revealed hidden weapon systems. Cargo ships that had been making regular supply runs began deploying military hardware. Even some of the space habitats where human families had been living were transforming into military installations. "You militarized your entire civilian population," Kethvar said, the words feeling hollow in his mouth. "We prepared our entire civilian population," Chen corrected. "Every human who left Earth knew they might one day be called upon to defend humanity against extinction. We hoped it would never be necessary, but we planned for the possibility." The scope of the deception was staggering. Humanity had spent 5 years creating the appearance of a weak, scattered species while actually building the largest military network in galactic history. They had hidden weapons platforms inside asteroid mining operations, concealed military command centers within diplomatic compounds, and embedded sleeper agents throughout every major civilization. "The question now," Chen continued, "is what happens next. Your fleet can withdraw, and this incident can be treated as a misunderstanding, or you can continue your attack and discover what total war means when fought by a species that has been preparing for it since before we made contact with galactic civilization." Var looked at his tactical display. Half his fleet was already gone, destroyed by weapons that his science officers could barely understand. The remainder were under constant attack by systems that seemed to adapt and evolve with each engagement. Traditional military doctrine had no answer for an enemy that could reconfigure their weapons in real time to counter any defense. But the tactical situation in Sol system was only the beginning. Reports were flooding in from throughout Zephyrian space as hidden human assets revealed themselves. Military installations that had taken decades to build were being destroyed in minutes by weapons that had been hidden in their own supply chains. Command structures were collapsing as communication networks that relied on human-built components suddenly turned against their operators. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we are receiving emergency transmissions from the homeworld. The orbital defense platforms are under attack by unidentified vessels." "No, sir, correction. They are under attack by vessels launching from within our own space stations." The magnitude of humanity's preparation became clear. They had not just prepared to defend their own territory. They had prepared to destroy any civilization that threatened them. The network of agents and hidden weapons was not defensive. It was a galaxy-spanning weapons system designed to eliminate entire species. "How long have you been planning this?" Kethvar asked. "Since the day we detected your first radio transmission," Chen replied. "Humanity learned early in our development that the universe is a dangerous place. We observed galactic civilization for decades before revealing ourselves. We watched empires rise and fall, studied the methods they used to conquer and control other species. We decided that if we were to survive, we needed to be stronger than all of them combined." The truth hit Kethvar like a physical blow. Humanity had never been the naive newcomers everyone believed them to be. They were apex predators who had been studying their prey for generations before revealing themselves. The 5 years of seeming weakness and submission had been an act, a carefully crafted deception designed to lull their enemies into complacency. "The Galactic Council," he whispered. "The other species. Do they know?" "Some suspect," Chen admitted. "The older, wiser civilizations have been quietly avoiding our space. They recognize the signs of a species that has been shaped by conflict. But most, like your empire, saw only what they wanted to see, a weak species to be dominated or ignored." Alarms screamed across the bridge as more ships were destroyed by weapons that seemed to anticipate their every move. The human defensive network was not just powerful. It was intelligent. It learned from each engagement, adapted to new tactics, and shared that knowledge instantaneously across the entire system. "Sir," Sarthak reported, his voice barely above a whisper, "our remaining ships are requesting permission to withdraw. Morale is collapsing. The crew believes we are fighting something beyond our ability to comprehend." Kethvar wanted to order a retreat, but he knew it was. Admiral Kethvar's flagship, the Crimson Talon, shuddered as another wave of nanoscale disassemblers washed over its hull. Through the viewport, he watched the last remnants of his proud fleet dissolve into clouds of component atoms. 50 warships that had struck fear into a dozen worlds were being systematically recycled by weapons that treated matter itself as raw material. "Sir," Lieutenant Sarthak reported, his voice hollow with defeat, "we are the only vessel remaining. All other ships have been consumed." But Kethvar barely heard him. His attention was fixed on the reports flooding in from across Zephyrian space. What was happening to his fleet was merely the opening movement of something far more comprehensive. The human revenge was not limited to the ships that had violated their territory. It extended to the entire civilization that had sent them. Emergency transmission from Zephyr Prime, the communications officer announced. The homeworld is under attack. The main display shifted to show a distant view of the Zephyrian capital world. What Kethvar saw defied everything he thought he knew about warfare. The planet was not being bombarded by ships or orbital weapons. Instead, structures on the surface were simply vanishing. Government buildings, military installations, industrial complexes, all disappearing as if they had never existed. "How?" he whispered. Admiral Chen's voice filled the bridge one final time. "Your people believe in conquest through overwhelming force. You build your weapons to destroy, your fleets to intimidate, your empires to dominate. But humans learned a different lesson from our history. We learned that the most effective weapon is not the one that destroys your enemy. It is the one that makes your enemy never have existed at all." On the tactical display, Kethvar watched the systematic implementation of what could only be called erasure warfare. Human agents who had been living and working throughout Zephyrian space for years were simultaneously activating technologies that went beyond simple destruction. Buildings were not just being demolished. They were being unmade at the quantum level, their very atoms reorganized into new configurations. "Temporal manipulation," breathed the science officer, studying the sensor readings. "They are not just destroying our infrastructure. They are editing it out of the timeline." The implications were staggering. Traditional warfare left ruins, wreckage, evidence of what had been destroyed. What humanity was doing left nothing at all. Entire cities were being retroactively removed from existence, their histories rewritten so that they had never been built in the first place. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we are losing contact with all off-world installations. Not because they are being destroyed, but because they are ceasing to exist. Our navigation computers are updating their star charts automatically, showing empty space where our colonies used to be." Kethvar realized with growing horror that this was not a military campaign. It was an editing process. Humanity was systematically removing the Zephyrian Empire from reality, erasing every trace that they had ever existed. The technology required for such an operation was beyond anything the galactic community had imagined possible. "The trade stations," Vextar reported, his voice thick with disbelief. "The ones we built using human-supplied materials. They are all disintegrating simultaneously. The construction materials themselves are reverting to their component elements." The methodical nature of the attack became clear. Every interaction between humanity and the Zephyrian Empire had been planned from the beginning. The trade agreements that had provided construction materials, the cultural exchanges that had mapped population centers, the diplomatic missions that had studied government structures, all of it had been preparation for this moment. "We never had a chance," Kethvar said quietly. "From the moment we made contact with them, this outcome was predetermined." Chen's voice confirmed his suspicions. "Every material we sold you contained molecular tags that could be activated remotely. Every cultural artifact we shared carried quantum markers that allowed us to track their distribution. Every diplomatic gift we gave was a surveillance device that mapped your most critical installations. The scope of humanity's preparation was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. They had not just infiltrated Zephyrian society. They had become part of its fundamental infrastructure. The very materials used to build their cities contained the seeds of their destruction, placed there years in advance by a species that planned for every possible contingency." "But why?" Kethvar demanded. "Why go to such lengths? You could have simply denied us passage through your space. You could have destroyed our fleet and left it at that." "Because," Chen replied, "deterrence only works if the consequences are absolute. If we had simply destroyed your fleet, other species would have seen it as a military defeat that could be overcome with better tactics or larger numbers. They would have learned the wrong lesson." On the display, the erasure of Zephyrian civilization continued with mechanical precision. Orbital shipyards that had been building warships for centuries were being unmade so completely that the space they had occupied showed no trace of their former existence. Even the raw materials that had been used in their construction were being returned to their original stellar locations, as if the mining operations that had extracted them had never occurred. "You are not just destroying us," Kethvar realized. You are making us never have existed. Correct, Chen confirmed. When this process is complete, galactic records will show that Zephyrian space was always empty. Your 17 star systems will be listed as uninhabited, available for colonization by species that demonstrate the wisdom to respect clearly marked boundaries. The technology required for such an operation was staggering. Humanity had developed the ability to manipulate causality itself, to edit reality at a fundamental level. They were not just militarily superior. They had achieved a level of technological advancement that bordered on godlike power. The other empires, Vextar said suddenly, they will not allow this. The hegemony, the Centauri alliance, they will see what you are doing and unite against you. Chen's laugh was soft and sad. Commander, you still do not understand. What makes you think the Zephyrian Empire was our only target? How many other civilizations do you think have been integrated into our network over the past 5 years? The final horrifying realization hit Kethvar like a physical blow. Humanity had not just prepared to defend against one potential threat. They had prepared to eliminate any threat that might ever arise. The network of agents, hidden weapons, and quantum markers extended throughout the entire galaxy. Every species that has traded with humanity, he whispered, every civilization that has had diplomatic contact, you have prepared to erase all of us. We have prepared for every possibility, Chen corrected. Most species will never need to learn these lessons directly. They will hear what happened to the Zephyrian Empire and make wiser choices. But for those who refuse to learn from example, the infrastructure is already in place. The bridge shook as the Crimson Talon's hull began to fail. The nanoscale disassemblers had finally penetrated their last defensive barriers and were beginning to consume the ship from within. But Kethvar barely noticed. His attention was fixed on the reports from Zephyr Prime, where the erasure process was nearing completion. Sir, Sarthek reported, the homeworld's population centers are gone. All of them. The planet itself is being restored to its pre-colonization state. Even the atmospheric modifications we made over centuries are being reversed. Kethvar watched his entire civilization disappear from existence with the systematic thoroughness of a computer program. Billions of Zephyrians were not being killed. They were being edited out of reality so completely that they had never been born. The genetic modifications that had created their species were being undone, their evolutionary timeline restored to its original path. This is beyond warfare, he said. This is playing God. No, Chen replied. This is mathematics. We calculated the probability of various threats emerging from different species based on their historical behavior patterns. The Zephyrian Empire scored in the 95th percentile for expansionist aggression. Your destruction was statistically inevitable from the moment we made contact. The clinical detachment, with which she described the annihilation of an entire civilization, was perhaps the most frightening aspect of the entire operation. This was not revenge or anger. It was the methodical implementation of a probability matrix that had determined the Zephyrian Empire to be an unacceptable risk to human survival. The worst part, Kethvar realized, is that you are probably right. We would have continued expanding, continued conquering, until we eventually threatened your core worlds. This outcome was inevitable. Yes, Chen agreed. We simply chose to control the timing and method of that inevitability. The erasure process was entering its final phase. The last Zephyrian installations were being unmade, their quantum signatures dissolved so completely that their former existence could only be detected by someone who had witnessed the process directly. Soon even those memories would be meaningless, as the galactic databases updated to reflect a reality where the Zephyrian Empire had never existed. Will you at least remember us? Kethvar asked as his ship began to come apart around him. Chen's expression on the display showed what might have been genuine sadness. The Galactic Council chamber had never been quieter. Representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in stunned silence, staring at empty seats where the Zephyrian delegation had been expected to appear. Their absence would have been unremarkable under normal circumstances, but these were not normal circumstances. Throughout the galaxy, database systems were updating themselves with impossible revisions. Star charts were being automatically corrected to show uninhabited systems where thriving Zephyrian colonies had existed just days before. Trade agreements were being deleted from archives, their existence scrubbed so thoroughly that only fragmented memories remained. to suggest they had ever been real. Speaker Vextai called the emergency session to order with visible difficulty. His 4 eyes blinked in rapid sequence, a sign of stress among his species. Distinguished delegates, we have received a request for immediate assembly from the human representative. Admiral Chen has indicated that she has urgent information to share with the Council. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Many representatives were struggling with fragmentary memories of the Zephyrian Empire, phantom recollections that no longer matched any official records. The older, more cautious species had sent their most senior diplomats, beings who had learned to trust their memories over databases. Admiral Chen entered the chamber with the same calm demeanor she had always displayed, but there was something different about her presence now. She moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had just solved a complex problem and was prepared to explain the solution. Her simple blue uniform seemed somehow more formal, more significant than it had before. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. "I appear before you today to discuss recent events that may have caused confusion in your records and memories. I want to assure you that these discrepancies are not the result of system failures or data corruption." Ambassador Tylek of the Rigel Commonwealth raised a tentacle. His ancient species had the longest memories in the galaxy, and his expression showed deep concern. "Admiral Chen, our archives show references to trade agreements and diplomatic protocols with an entity called the Zephyrian Empire, but no records of such an empire actually existing. Can you explain this discrepancy?" Chen nodded respectfully to the elder diplomat. "I can, Ambassador. The Zephyrian Empire did exist until very recently. They were removed from the timeline following their violation of clearly established territorial boundaries and their subsequent refusal to withdraw when given multiple opportunities to do so." The chamber erupted in confused voices as representatives struggled to process this information. The concept of removing an entire civilization from existence was beyond their experience. Wars resulted in conquered territories and subjugated populations, not the complete erasure of historical reality. Chancellor Morathek of the Centauri Alliance found her voice first. "You are claiming responsibility for the disappearance of an entire star-spanning empire? That is impossible. No single species possesses such power." "Respectfully, Chancellor, you are incorrect," Chen replied. "Humanity has possessed this capability for quite some time. We hoped never to demonstrate it, but the Zephyrian Empire's actions made such a demonstration necessary." She activated a holographic display that showed the Sol system as it had appeared during the recent conflict. The massive defensive installations, the weaponized asteroids, the Dyson swarm around the sun, all of it was revealed in perfect detail. "For the past 5 years, you have known humanity as a peaceful, cooperative member of galactic society. This was not deception in the traditional sense. We genuinely prefer peace and cooperation. However, we have always been prepared for the alternative." The display shifted to show a galaxy-wide view with points of light indicating the locations of human assets throughout known space. The network was vast, comprehensive, and clearly the result of decades of careful planning. Every trade mission, every diplomatic exchange, every cultural program has served a dual purpose, Chen continued. While building relationships and fostering understanding, we have also been establishing the infrastructure necessary to defend our interests against any conceivable threat. Representative Colthanis of the Hegemony spoke up, his mechanical voice carrying digital distortion that indicated extreme stress. "You have been infiltrating our societies while pretending to be peaceful traders and diplomats. We have been preparing for our survival, while genuinely hoping such preparations would never be needed," Chen corrected. "Every human outside our home system understood that they might one day be called upon to defend our species against extinction. They accepted this responsibility willingly." The implications of her words sent ripples of fear through the assembly. If humanity had been placing agents and weapons throughout the galaxy for years, then every major civilization was potentially compromised. The network that had erased the Zephyrian Empire could be activated against any of them. "How many of our people are actually human agents?" demanded Senator Velkar of the Outer Rim Coalition. "None," Chen replied simply. "We do not use infiltration or replacement tactics. Every human you have met has been genuinely human. We do not believe in deception regarding identity or basic nature. However, We do prepare for contingencies that others might prefer to ignore. The distinction was important, but provided little comfort. Humanity had not hidden their presence, but they had hidden their capabilities. Every human diplomat, trader, or student was exactly what they appeared to be, and also a potential military asset in a network spanning the galaxy. Ambassador Talek spoke again, his ancient voice carrying the weight of long experience. Admiral Chen, my species has observed the rise and fall of many civilizations. We have learned to recognize certain patterns in behavior that indicate future threats. Your actions today demonstrate capabilities that could reshape galactic civilization. What assurance can you give that humanity will not use these powers to dominate other species? Chen's expression showed what might have been genuine appreciation for the question. Ambassador, that is precisely the right question to ask. The answer lies in understanding why we developed these capabilities in the first place. The holographic display changed to show Earth as it had appeared before human space travel. A blue world scarred by the evidence of countless wars. Cities reduced to ruins. Landscapes poisoned by conflict. Entire regions made uninhabitable by weapons of mass destruction. Humanity learned the cost of conflict early in our development, Chen explained. We discovered that survival required not just the ability to defend ourselves, but the wisdom to know when such defense was necessary. Our territorial restrictions exist, not because we want to dominate space, but because we want to live in peace within clearly defined boundaries. The display showed the growth of human space exploration, but instead of the aggressive expansion that characterized most species, it revealed a pattern of careful, methodical development focused on defense rather than conquest. We have no interest in ruling other species or claiming their territories, Chen continued. We want to exist peacefully within our own space, trading and cooperating with neighbors who respect our boundaries. The Zephyrian Empire chose to test those boundaries despite repeated warnings. They discovered that some boundaries exist for very good reasons. Chancellor Vexai of the Antarian Collective raised a crystalline appendage. Admiral, you speak of peace, but you have just demonstrated the ability to erase entire civilizations from existence. How can any species feel safe knowing that such power exists? Chancellor, you should feel safer, not less safe, Chen replied. The power to completely eliminate threats means that we have no need for partial measures. Species that respect our boundaries and maintain peaceful relations have nothing to fear from us. We have no reason to use these capabilities against civilizations that pose no threat to our survival. The logic was sound, but chilling. Humanity had developed such overwhelming military superiority that they could afford to be genuinely peaceful. They did not need to conquer or intimidate because they could simply erase any threat that emerged. It was peace through the ultimate deterrent. The Zephyrian Empire was erased because they represented an existential threat to human survival, Chen continued. Their culture celebrated conquest. Their military doctrine focused on domination, and their leadership refused to respect clearly established boundaries. Mathematical analysis indicated a 95% probability that they would eventually attempt to invade human space with overwhelming force. She paused, allowing the implications to sink in. Other species that demonstrate respect for territorial sovereignty and peaceful coexistence pose no such threat. Our network of assets exists as a deterrent, not as a tool for expansion or domination. The chamber fell silent as representatives processed this information. The most militaristic species were undoubtedly wondering about their own threat ratings in humanity's probability matrices. The more peaceful civilizations were probably feeling relief that their diplomatic approaches had kept them off the target list. Ambassador Talek spoke once more, his voice thoughtful. Admiral, you have demonstrated that humanity possesses the power to reshape Gala